First question is, how do you determine too loud?
Well, too loud, when we measure sound, it's measured in sound pressure level. And the way to do it is with a sound pressure level meter is really the only way to determine how loud you're playing, right? So as a drummer, if you're sitting behind the drum kit, you can either borrow one, or Radio Shack has cheap sound level meters. You can find them around. You want to set it to A weighting. I know that most music industry people measure in C. However, for hearing protection reasons, it's all A weighted. We won't get into the science behind it, but A weighting is where you go. Now, the other thing to determine is how long you're playing. People think about how loud more than they think about how long, and I try to reverse that because drummers especially, you're never really going to probably drum much over 110 unless you've got wedges all around you and you're really a hard hitter. So let's say even the harder hitting drummers are averaging 110 dB. Now we're talking about how long can you drum there. So if your show's 30 minutes, you're at a much better shape than somebody that has a 4-hour show. Meaning that touring bands that have 2 or 3 days off and do an hour show have a lower risk of losing hearing than the people that are playing daily 3 to 4 hour club shows, right?
What is the best way that you would recommend to actually begin protecting your hearing, taking steps now to do that if you haven't in the past?
Protecting the hearing, and we're talking mainly for drummers, are we?
Yeah, mainly for drummers.
For drummers, you know, the problem with drums, unlike all the other instruments, is that it's difficult to play them quietly, right? You can get an acoustic guitar if you're an electric guitar player. If you're a vocalist, you can sing without a mic. But a drummer really has to hit the drums to make sound on them. So people sometimes should at least wear some hearing protection while you're rehearsing, practicing at home, and for live gigs. That can be either through the form of an earplug, which is always a reduction in sound, or an ear-to-ear monitor, which requires some expertise on an audiologist to tell you how loud you're turning them. So having in-ear monitors is not a hearing protection device per se, just because they do amplify, and if you turn it up as loud as your floor wedges where you're not really doing any protection.
Right.
But I would say wearing some plugs and making sure you do it in rehearsal, even sound check. If you say you can't do it during the show, the more you can avoid loud sound, the better. That also applies to normal everyday activities outside your music activity. So if you ride a motorcycle, you should wear plugs. If you work with power tools, you should wear plugs. If you go hunting or do shooting at all, you should wear plugs. So remember, anytime you're around loud sound, it all adds into your exposures in music. And so if you can eliminate the non-musical exposures, you're in great shape.
What about having your hearing checked? I know that's something that people neglect. You've mentioned it to me before. What's your take on that?
Ashley, you know, I really believe that more than wearing earplugs, a hearing test annually is the most important thing you can do to protect your hearing. Everybody thinks shoving something in your head is the best way, but you really don't know how effective that hearing protection is unless you get a baseline hearing test and then get an annual recheck of your hearing. So we really recommend yearly checks. If your hearing's starting to change, whether you're wearing hearing protection or not, it's going to change in small amounts over a year period. But if you get a hearing test every 10 years, there could be huge changes in hearing, and there's nothing you can do about it once the hearing's damaged. So annual hearing tests are really important.